Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and really dig into them for those surprising nuggets of knowledge.
That's the plan.
Today, we're plunging into a first-person account of legal proceedings. It's a narrative that gives this rare glimpse into a mind that really challenges, conventional understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Our source is an excerpt from Strange Chase1.pdf, and it's this raw, very personal narrative. It's from the perspective of someone facing a murder charge.
Mm.
But what's compelling, I think, isn't really about finding guilt or innocence. It's more about exploring these profound disconnects that emerge. When the legal system tries to grapple with someone who sees the world really differently.
Okay, right. So let's unpack this then. Our mission today, really, is to pull out those surprising insights. Insights into perception, justice, self-understanding, the stuff that really jumps out from this account.
Yeah.
Get ready, or maybe some aha moments that might just shift how you think about what it means to be understood. So you're thrown right in, aren't you? He starts, right after my arrest, I was questioned several times, but it was just so they could find out who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Our narrator, Monsieur Mersal, he starts by describing this initial police indifference. Then he meets this curious examining magistrate.
Right.
And his first thought, the case is pretty simple. He doesn't even think a lawyer is really necessary.
And that right there, that's the first, major signal of this profound disconnect we're talking about. I mean, think about it facing a murder charge and thinking it's simple.
Yeah, it's jarring.
And the magistrate's response immediately highlights the clash. That's your opinion, but the law is the law. It's
God.
this formal rigidity hitting up against the narrator's casual dismissal.
He even finds it very convenient that the court appoints an attorney for him. Convenient.
Exactly. And this initial scene, with the magistrate kind of in the shadows, the narrator feels like it's all a game, even though he notes the magistrate seems very reasonable and overall quite pleasant.
Yeah.
You see that casualness, even in the way he almost shakes his hand until he suddenly remembers.
Right, he remembers. I had killed a man. That detail just hits you.
It really does. It underlines that gap between his internal state and the gravity of the situation.
Okay, so after that first encounter, he gets the court-appointed lawyer. And this is where it gets, really interesting, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Now we meet the lawyer.
Described as short and chubby, quite young, his hair carefully slicked back, wears a dark suit, even though it's hot, and this odd-looking tie with broad black and white stripes.
Quite the image. And he starts off, professionally enough. Says the case is tricky, but no doubts we'd win if I trusted him.
Standard lawyer talk, maybe?
But then the conversation takes a sharp turn, right? It moves away from the actual murder pretty quickly. Why does that happen?
Well, this is crucial. The lawyer immediately pivots. He starts asking about the narrator's private life.
Yeah.
Specifically about his mother's recent death.
Yeah.
And his perceived insensitivity at her funeral.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't just idle curiosity.
Yeah. No, it's strategy. The lawyer explains it's potentially a strong argument for the prosecution if I can't come up with some answers.
Ah, okay. So his emotional response, or lack of it, could be used against him.
Exactly. In many legal systems, the defendant's perceived character, their emotional reactions, can really sway things. Juries, judges, they look for remorse, for understandable behavior.
Right.
So the lawyer presses him, did you feel sadness that day? And this is a question the narrator finds, surprisingly difficult. He tells the lawyer he'd pretty much lost the habit of analyzing myself.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was hard for me to tell him what he wanted to know. There's this block, this inability or unwillingness to perform introspection in the way the lawyer expects.
And then comes that absolutely candid, almost shocking response he gives the lawyer.
Which one's that?
I probably did love Mamo, but that didn't mean anything. And then he adds, at one time or another, all normal people have wished their loved ones were dead.
Right. I mean, you can just imagine the lawyer's reaction. The text says he was very upset.
Understandably. He makes the narrator promise not to say that in court or to the magistrate.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, you really see the defense lawyer struggling. He's trying to fit the narrator into a box, a conventional emotional framework that the court can understand.
But he doesn't fit.
Not at all. The lawyer even tries to help him, suggests maybe he could say he had held back my natural feelings. Give them something.
And the narrator's response.
Just flat out, no, because it's not true. Brutal honesty again.
And how does the lawyer take that?
The text says he looked at him as if he found me slightly disgusting, which is quite a reaction.
Yeah.
And he warns him, things could get very nasty based on what witnesses from the old people's home might say. It just highlights this huge communication gap.
And seems the narrator senses this too. He wants things to be good in a natural way between them, but feels he's made the lawyer uncomfortable, that he's not understood.
But then what does he do? He gives up trying to explain why. Out of laziness, he says.
Laziness.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
It really is. And it sort of reveals a critical challenge for the defense. How do you build a case for someone whose own indifference, whose lack of expected feeling, undermines the very concepts of remorse and motive the legal system relies on?
That's a huge hurdle. So, okay, the lawyer meeting is difficult. Then he meets the magistrate again.
Yes, the second meeting. And this time, the intensity ramps up in a different way.
How so?
Well, first, the lawyer isn't there. The narrator says he could answer for myself. The magistrate starts by mentioning how people describe the narrator taciturn and withdrawn.
Okay.
But then he quickly shifts focus. What interests me is you. He wants the narrator to recount the day of the murder.
And he does.
Yeah, he goes through it. Raymond, the beach, the swim, the quarrel, the sun, and the 5 shots. And the magistrate just keeps nodding, saying, fine, fine, and good, like he's collecting the facts.
But then
The magistrate zooms in on one very specific detail. The pause.
the pause between the shots.
Exactly. He asks, why did you pause between the first and second shot? And later, hammering the point, why did you shoot at a body that was on the ground?
And can the narrator explain?
No. He finds himself completely unable to answer why. And this is really where you see the judicial process trying to dig deeper than just the facts. It's searching for meaning, for motive, for something understandable behind the act.
They need the why.
They need the why, and the narrator doesn't seem to have one, or at least not one he can articulate in a way that makes sense to them.
And this is where the meeting takes another really dramatic turn, isn't it? With the crucifix.
Oh, absolutely. Things get very intense. The magistrate suddenly produces a silver crucifix. He brandishes it, shouts, "Do you know what this is?"
Wow.
He then launches into this passionate speech, all about God, forgiveness, repentance. He's leaning over the table, waving the crucifix right over the narrator's head.
How does the narrator react to that?
He admits finding it very hard to follow his reasoning. Partly, he says, because of the heat and the flies buzzing around.
He mentions the flies a lot.
He does, but also because, he was scaring me a little. Which is interesting because he immediately follows it up by thinking, it's ridiculous because, after all, I was the criminal.
That's such a strange thought process. He's scared, but thinks it's ridiculous he's scared because he's the criminal?
It shows that disconnect again, doesn't it? But this whole scene, it really raises a question about the role of personal conviction, personal faith, within a supposedly objective legal setting. The magistrate deeply believes that no man was so guilty that God would not forgive him. But forgiveness requires repentance, faith.
And the narrator doesn't offer that.
Not at all. When the magistrate pushes him, asks if he believes in God, the narrator just says, no.
Just no.
Just no. And the magistrate is indignant. He shouts, "Do you want my life to be meaningless?" It reveals this incredibly personal stake he has in getting the narrator to confess faith.
His own meaning is tied up in the narrator believing.
It seems that way in that moment. And the narrator observes this. He internally admits he was struck by how sincere he seemed. But also, he'd had enough.
He just checks out emotionally.
Yeah. It's this stark clash. Profound religious belief hitting a wall of, well, indifference. It really makes you question, what justice looks like when a judge's personal faith gets so deeply intertwined with extracting a specific kind of confession.
Definitely. And the magistrate's final take on the narrator is just chilling.
What did he say?
He says, "I have never seen a soul as hardened as yours. The criminals who have come before me have always wept at the sight of this image of suffering, meaning the crucifix."
Wow. Hardened.
And the narrator almost has this comeback. He almost says it's precisely because they were criminals that they wept.
Which is another fascinating insight into his thinking.
But then he stops himself because he suddenly realizes, but then I realized that I was one too. It was an idea I couldn't get used to.
He struggles with the label itself,
Yeah.
even after everything.
Exactly. And when the magistrate asks if he's sorry for what he did, his answer isn't yes or no. He says he was more than sorry. I felt kind of annoyed.
Annoyed, not remorseful, not defiant, just annoyed.
Yeah.
That final exchange just perfectly sums up the chasm, doesn't it? The magistrate expects remorse connection through the shared moral religious framework.
Right, the weeping criminal.
Framework, yeah. And he gets annoyance. And the struggle the narrator has, just grappling with the basic concept of being a criminal, his own emotional world just doesn't map onto the expectations of the law or society.
It really doesn't. It highlights how much our justice system relies on this shared, often unspoken agreement about what normal human feelings and reactions are.
And when that agreement breaks down, when someone operates completely outside it, where does justice even go then?
That's the question. So after these incredibly intense sessions, does the dynamic change?
It does, quite significantly. The narrator continues to see the magistrate a lot, but now his lawyer is always present.
Yeah.
And the focus shifts. It becomes more about clarifying previous statements or the magistrate discussing charges directly with the lawyer. The narrator feels, he says, largely ignored during these later meetings.
So the intense personal scrutiny stops.
Yeah, it seems the magistrate has sort of lost interest in the narrator personally, like he's come to some sort of decision about my case in his own mind.
The religious questioning stops.
Completely ceases. And the discussions actually become more cordial.
More cordial after the crucifix scene.
Strange, isn't it? The narrator even says he begins to breathe more freely and gets this ridiculous impression of being one of the family.
Wow, one of the family. That's quite a shift.
It's a very striking pivot from intense, almost spiritual confrontation to something much more procedural and, well, detached.
So what does this shift tell us about the legal process itself when faced with someone like him?
Well, the whole investigation drags on for 11 months, and how does it finally conclude? The magistrate gives him a slap on the shoulder and says casually, "That's all for today, Monsieur Antichrist."
Monsieur Antichrist. Just like that.
Just like that. It's this incredibly unsettling, almost bizarrely casual end to the whole examination phase. It shows this final, detached categorization of the narrator.
So the system couldn't understand him, so it just labeled him?
It kind of feels that way. It suggests that when faced with profound incomprehension, the system, or at least the people within it, might eventually resort to labeling and a kind of disengagement.
Rather than achieve true understanding.
Exactly. Those initial attempts to find some emotional resonance, some shared ground, whether through sorrow or faith, they give way. It becomes more about pragmatic processing. And that shift from the intense heart and soul stuff to a casual nickname like Monsieur Antichrist, it really encapsulates that journey from bewildering difference to, I guess, resigned categorization.
You're like journey indeed. Into, the mechanics of legal inquiry, but also just into the bewildering landscape of a human mind. This deep dive, I feel like it's really shown us how that quest for justice can become this profound struggle. A struggle to understand a mind that just operates on a completely different frequency.
We've definitely seen how the legal process tried, didn't it? Tried to fit the narrator into these pre-existing molds, sorrow, guilt, faith.
Yeah.
Only to be met with this perplexing disinterest in looking inward and self-analysis and this inability to connect with what we consider normal emotional or spiritual frameworks.
So the insights are less about the crime itself, really.
I think so. They're more about the boundaries of human understanding and maybe the limitations of systems like the legal system that are built on assumptions that we all share the same basic internal landscape.
Which clearly we don't always.
Yeah.
So if understanding someone truly deeply means we have to step outside our own way of seeing things, what does it mean when a legal system, which is built on these shared assumptions about human nature, about emotion, encounters a mind that fundamentally operates outside them?
That's the core question, isn't it?
And what happens to justice then? Especially for someone whose reaction to being asked if he's sorry is, more than sorry, I felt kind of annoyed.
Yeah. What does justice mean in that context? It's a profound question, really, about the very foundations of how we judge and perceive each other.
Definitely something to mull over. Until our next deep dive.